if it's a happy, healthy relationship, typically that stuff, the storyline isn't exciting enough. Typically, high achieving people at some point have felt like they were only lovable based on what they do. We're genetically wired to seek what's familiar. So if from our childhood, what was familiar was chaos, abuse, unhealthy dynamics, then that is what we will seek in partnership.
Hello everyone, welcome back to an episode of the Breaking Point podcast. Today we're here with Monica, is it Wadwa?
Yeah, Wadwa, yeah, it's an Indian surname, so it's quite hard to pronounce, but yeah.
What a name, well Monica Wadwa. Monica, take it away. You tell everyone what there is to say before we start.
Hi everybody, my name is Monica Wadwa. I'm a dating and relationship coach and author, and I also have my own podcast as well called With Love Monica, and I'm also involved in a partnership where we're building, our aim is to build the largest relationship newsletter and online membership in the world. So that's been an exciting new project that I've been involved with. But my main focus has been coaching specifically single women to try to get them to embody more of their queen energy, and how I describe it as your queen energy and then attract your king. So that's been my main focus at the moment. But really my mission in life is to help more people form healthy relationships with others by first forming a healthier relationship with themselves.
What's queen energy? I like that. We got to start off with there.
Yeah, so my book is called Queen Treatment, and it's basically queen energy is what I would describe. Well, so I have this sort of signature framework, which is that I kind of describe it as people dating from either their queen energy and their king energy, or their princess energy and their prince energy. And basically those two attract each other. So queens attract kings, kings attract queens, and then vice versa for princesses and princes as well. And what I basically mean by that is that princesses and princes, they haven't fully self-actualized yet. They don't really fully know who they are yet. They don't know their purpose. So they're still seeking and searching. And so for a woman, when she's dating, she's typically seeking validation in the form of, those sorts of things. And so her self-worth is quite low. And so she's dating from that place. And a man and a prince, he also is seeking validation, but that will often come in the form of, seeking also attention from multiple different women, and, perhaps wanting to do things just to make himself look good rather than because his actions are grounded in integrity and those sorts of things. And then when people have done the healing work on themselves to basically be operating from a place of wholeness and self-attunement and self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, then they operate very differently when it comes to dating. So when a woman, for instance, is dating from her queen energy, I describe that as, she's dating from a place of real self-worth. She knows who she is, and she's very connected to herself. She's not desperately seeking validation from lots of different men. She's whole and complete with or without a partner, and that's a very different energy to be dating from than dating from your princess energy of seeking attention and all that kind of stuff. And then how I describe it is that the queen will then attract a king into her life, who is a man who is grounded in integrity and wants to build a legacy rather than seeking short-term hedonism, essentially. Kings and queens, though, when they're coming from that place of a queen energy and king energy, then that's, I believe, a very solid foundation for a long-lasting partnership.
I like that idea. That's actually really cool. That's a good way of conceptualizing the different stages. What's prince energy again?
So prince energy, again, it's basically dating from a place of insecurity, but it comes up in a slightly different form to the princess. That will be seeking short-term hedonistic things like sleeping with lots of different women, and getting the ego boost from basically having like a doll by his side, as opposed to wanting to seek a partner who he can build a legacy with and have an emotional connection to and things like that. Basically kind of operating from his sex organs rather than from his heart, or from, with a long-term vision in mind. And, these are the type of guys who are, using their money to basically give them an ego boost of the tables in the clubs and all of that kind of stuff. But equally, I do say that the prince can also be the prince charming. He can say all the right things. This is the guy who uses his money to fly you out to all these flashy places and things like that, but it's not necessarily grounded in
He
integrity
uses his
or
words.
grounded in what, sorry?
He uses his words to
Exactly. And it's a way
manipulate.
to kind of manipulate and control as opposed to, genuinely wanting to provide for the well-being of that person.
Yeah. So does that mean that, well, first question, can some people start off in their king and queen energy, and some people, can you have young people in the king and queen energy, and can you have more older people, more sort of mature people in their prince and princess energy?
For sure, definitely, 100%. Yeah, I mean, that's my framework of how I describe it. But if we look at it from a slightly different angle, you could also see it under the framework of the attachment theory. That there is some people who, because of the way that they were brought up, they have secure attachment, whereas other people, because of the way that they were brought up or things that happened in later relationships in life, then it causes them to be anxiously attached or avoidantly attached, or yeah, those are the two main
Yeah.
ones, I guess. But so yeah, you can be operating from a very secure attachment as soon as you start dating. That doesn't necessarily need to be something that you heal your way into. But I guess because of the work that I do, typically people do have some healing that they need to do. And actually, when I'm looking at specifically women, I actually kind of branch out a little bit further and I talk about women dating from their princess energy and also from their wounded queen energy, which is typically actually the very high achieving women who maybe they're doing incredibly in business or in work, but they very much believe that love has to be earned and that they have to do things in order to achieve love rather than just knowing that they're enough just as they are. So kind of have that within the females, I have it branch out even further within the framework.
Because you mentioned the term high achieving women quite a lot, and I've spoken to, one of the first ever episodes I did was with a dating coach for specifically high achieving women and high achieving people.
Mm.
And she said what I sort of assumed was the case, is that the more high achieving you are, then the more difficult it probably becomes for you to find someone who matches or exceeds your expectations, desires, and wants, and sort of competency levels in life. So it doesn't surprise me that that would be a subcategory of people that are coming to you. So I guess what I am interested in is, what do you classify as a high achieving woman? What are the aspects and the facets of that?
Yeah, I think the reason why I love working with high achieving women is because they are willing to do the work on themselves. Because I think maybe when people hear dating coach, yeah, but also willing to face themselves, that takes a lot of courage to face your past wounds, to deal with your past childhood conditioning, which not everybody is willing to do. And so what I love about working with high achieving women is that they're on their personal development journey. They're willing to grow and do the work that it takes to grow and evolve and become a better version of themselves. And so, yeah, when I say high achieving, I don't just mean in terms of in a work type scenario. I mean also in terms of
Yeah,
mentality, that
of
they
course.
they want to grow and better themselves. But I think the sort of shadow side of that sometimes, and this is, yeah, as you said, for high achieving men as well, this isn't just for women, but feeling like typically high achieving people at some point have felt like they were only lovable based on what they
Mm.
do.
Yeah.
And so there's this fine balance, I believe, between, going for your goals and knowing that you deserve to achieve it all. And at the same time, also knowing that you're lovable just as you are, and that you're enough just as you are, and you don't need to do these things in order to be lovable. And if you have that mentality in life, you'll also see it coming into relationships as well, that you feel like, I need to do all these things for this
Mm.
person so that they love me. I need to look perfect. I need to behave in this certain way. Yeah, it involves deep inner work to be able to heal that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I love working with high achieving women.
And if you are successful, the likelihood is that you're high in personality trait industriousness, which is basically well, you enjoy working hard, but it's more you feel necessitated to work hard. And if you're one of those people, then
Mm,
likelihood is you reflect everything back into yourself, not in a selfish way, but from a point of
mm,
view. So the best example would be, if someone is a high industrious individual, when then someone breaks up with them, they'll spend all their time thinking about, what did I do wrong? So it's about not what that person did wrong. They're adapted well to put the emphasis on themselves, and that will leak into their ability to work hard. So a narcissistic person is likely to be low in industriousness, so they won't think about what they did wrong, they'll think about what someone else did wrong. Whereas a high industrious person will think about, what did I do wrong? How can I influence?
Yeah.
And that's linked to like disgust sensitivity, which is really, God, who was I talking about disgust with? Someone, and we were talking about eating disorders with women, and I was saying how a lot of women with eating disorders are likely very high industriousness, which means that they're high in disgust sensitivity, which means that they don't actually have an accurate view of the way that they look, because their brain's so like hardwired to see flaws basically, and to like hone in on them. And then you combine that with like a societal influence of, well, not just societal, but also like biological, women being judged more based on their physical appearance than men. You combine those two facets, you can get a recipe for disaster. But yeah, industriousness and all the positive that's come with that, and being potentially successful, obviously has its downfall.
Yes. Well, I think also there's such a difference between placing blame on yourself and taking responsibility, because that's for me the difference with the work that I do. Is I by no means want to place blame on any of my clients, for because at the end of the day as well, even when they're behaving in unhealthy ways, that's typically not to do with them, that's to do with their childhood or things like that. So they don't have control over what happened in their past, but in order to take back their power, you do need to take some level of responsibility rather than viewing yourself as the victim of circumstance. But that for me is very different to placing blame on yourself. So again, it's that fine balance. But yeah, high achieving women, sometimes I do need to rein them back in and be like, wait, this isn't putting blame on yourself, but let's just, in order to take steps forward, we do need to now say, okay, we can't change other people, but all we can have control over is ourselves in this situation. So what can we do to, even you mentioned about being in relationships with narcissistic people, and they're very attracted to, high achieving people, because they, narcissistic
Feed off
people
them.
typically don't take responsibility themselves. And high achieving women take on a lot of responsibility themselves. And so, but even in that situation, you can look at, okay, it's not that you're to blame for their abusive behavior, but what responsibility can you take so that this doesn't happen again in the future? And so we can look at things like having healthier boundaries and stuff like that. Again, it's not placing blame on yourself, but saying, how can you keep yourself safer next time, essentially?
Yeah, boundaries are really important, and use the word blame. Blame can quickly become shame, can't it? And shame is a really, well, shame is there to like teach you and to serve you, providing you don't continually beat yourself around the head with it, because at that point it no longer becomes a tool, it becomes a vice. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and I think there obviously will be an element of healing, because people have inevitably fucked up by their childhood, and that creates maladaptive patterns and behaviors and etc. But I think there's also an element of integration. So you've lived in the UK, haven't you? At
Yeah.
times in your life. Yeah, cool. So growing up, my mum used to watch these films on Channel 5 that would come on after Home and Away and Neighbours every single day. And they would follow the same pattern every single time. And I used to say to her, Mum, why do you watch these films? You literally saw the exact same film 3 days ago. She couldn't really understand why. And it's because it plays out the female narrative, the female, I don't know if it's not just a female romantic narrative. Sometimes it is the female romantic narrative, which is basically where young, innocent, attractive, unassuming women meets clearly bad news guy, doesn't see it, ends up in a load of trouble, then has to get herself out of it. But there's another narrative, another plot, which is where she interacts or encounters an awful woman who's out to get her and sabotage her and like ruin her life, and she has to like overcome that situation. And I was thinking, so what does that mean? It means that not only do women have to integrate their relationship with men and the men that they could potentially build long-lasting relationships with, they also have to integrate the toxic aspect of their own personality. And that is what that's what I think those films are playing out. There's the main character, protagonist, and the antagonist, and it's like they're building a relationship between the two I don't think I think healing's an aspect, but I think there's a process of integration and maturity that comes with as you mature and grow up as a woman. And a part of that is maybe being drawn to the wrong sorts of men when you're younger, but part of that is also watching how you what person do you become in those scenarios when you're put under that sort of pressure and influence, and what does that say about yourself?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that? Because the healing idea is definitely accurate, but I think I used the word actualization earlier. I think there's a process of actualization that is, I haven't articulated it phenomenally well, but it's wrapped up in that literary narrative like plot that women are so drawn to because like, I mean, these films are on every single day and they have done like my entire life. So obviously people keep watching them and they're the same thing each time. And then they go,
Okay.
okay, maybe this isn't ideal, but I've grown as a person, and therefore my outlook on men and masculinity has grown as a result as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Complicated. Maybe it's rubbish, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, no, I love the question. Really interesting. Yes, 100%. I think lived experience is the best way to truly grow. And that's why, honestly, when you get into relationship with somebody, when you're single, you can do all this work on yourself. But then when you get into relationship, it's like that's level one, and now you're at level two, and there's a whole different set of things that you need to work through. So yes, 100%. And that's why I say like every relationship can be viewed as a beautiful blessing in your life, because it's still, if you can come away from even like a breakup, learning from the experience of, like, why was I attracted to somebody who maybe didn't treat me right, or someone who embodied certain types of attributes? So why did I behave in this certain way? And again, it's not to praise blame, but it's just that then, like anything that happens in our life, if you can learn from the experience, then it's you're moving forward. And yeah, I think honestly, what I've seen in the dating scenario is that the more that you heal, you don't even need to consciously choose healthier partnerships. It just happens. You know, that like we are very conditioned from a young age to I mean, it's in our biology. Like we do need to heal that stuff so that then we will attract and be attracted to different types of partnerships. And yeah, it's so interesting how it's not something you even need to be consciously aware of. Once you've done more of the healing, you will just be attracted to different sorts of people. And so, as people talk about women being attracted to the bad boy and stuff, and yes, I think there's an element of perhaps that women are attracted to men who they feel like could protect them. So even if that would mean that they could be dangerous towards them, they're also dangerous towards other people. And so perhaps there's like a subconscious wiring there of wanting to feel like, well, I'd rather be with someone who's dangerous than someone who is too feeble and weak to be able to defend me in a situation. I think that's very subconscious, but there's perhaps an element of that there. But also I do feel like when we're younger, and this is what I talk about, like with the princess energy of who you're seeking to date, and when you're coming from an insecure place when you're dating, then you're going to want the bad boy who is so hard to get because it makes you feel like, wow, I'm this person who never dates anybody, or who treats other women badly. I can change him. I can make him treat me better and then I'll feel lovable enough. But that's not what relationships should be about. And so, yeah, I do feel like the older that women get, the more healing that they've done on themselves, then the less likely they are to want to go for that kind of man. But then in terms of in the media and stuff like that, at the end of the day, like you know, drama sells basically. And so that is the sort of stuff that would do better on a TV show, even for any age audience, just because it's more exciting at the end of the day. And yeah, if it's a happy, healthy relationship, typically that stuff, the storyline isn't exciting enough. So yeah.
Well, so when you say media, what do you mean? Do you mean like television shows, or do you just mean like like articles and publications, or you?
Yeah, I mean, even Love Island, if you look at Love Island, it's so toxic, the dynamics of the relationships and stuff. And I mean, honestly, it does worry me a little bit because obviously at my age, then maybe less people are going to be indoctrinated by that kind of thing. But I do feel like we are influenced, especially when we're young, by the stuff that we're repetitively watching and taking in. So yeah, it's interesting. It would be interesting to see like what kind of effect that has on younger dating generations. But yeah, even with things like Love Island, reality TV, there is a lot of things that are sort of promoted to us online with relationships that are actually quite toxic dynamics, but are sort of romanticized in some way.